Look, today is a very important day that I want to discuss with you all. I don't actually think it's had enough coverage, if you ask me. Today is International Men's Day. When it's any other day, we don't stop hearing about it from the second we open our eyes until the moment we go to bed, do we? But this day seems to have not really got that much of a mention. One of the stats that focused my attention very much is the issue of male suicide. And, you know, globally, every minute of every single day, one man dies by suicide. So we start the programme at 6, your next one's on here at 7 o'clock. Obviously, that's 60 men will have died whilst we're on air. And it got me thinking about the broader question of what is going on. I'm not a man, obviously, but I feel I have got a son, so it's a very important issue as well to me, but I feel that often men are getting vilified in society. I think you used to be regarded as hunter-gatherers, protectors, and I think so much has gone on now where we've kind of equalised women, and I wonder if that's left men feeling confused about their role. You've got the whole mental health issue, and where are you on some of these topics?
So on the topic specifically of International Men's Day, I think that in and of itself is a symptom of the extent to which our societies have become feminised. The idea that what men are crying out for is a pat on the head by some, faceless institution that's going to give them their own day, completely fundamentally misunderstands the problem. Because I am of the belief, speaking as a young man that has grown up in, modern society, I was born in 2001, I've seen the way that men are sort of thought of, the way men live in the modern world. And ours is a society that is completely oriented against heroism and duty and purpose, and is more interested in egalitarianism and fairness and all of these sorts of things. And while to a certain extent that sort of thing is important, men don't want to feel loved. Men don't want to feel equal. Men don't want to feel like they're good little boys. If I may finish, Michelle.
Men don't want to feel loved.
Men want to feel powerful. Men want to feel like they have a role and a purpose in the world, because that's how men get their sense of satisfaction and fulfilment in life. And I say that as somebody, who very much feels that way. And I think that if you speak to most young men who are finding escape in things like computer games and that sort of thing, that's absolutely the impulse that they are chasing, whether they know it or not.
But I find it's this notion that you just told me that you don't think that men, and I mean, I'm a woman, so I don't know why I'm lecturing a man about what men feel.
You're womansplaining to me.
Yeah, I'm womansplaining to you. God, I could get myself kicked off some channels for doing that. But you're telling me that men don't want to be loved, or is it that men don't want to admit that they don't want to be loved? So that they can't admit that they want to be loved.
I think men obviously want to be loved, but that's not what they're missing in the modern world. What they're missing is purpose. What they're missing is a cause, something that to do with their lives. Because men are trapped in these air-conditioned, soft-handed offices, chasing spreadsheets and KPIs and goals and that sort of thing. And that's absolutely crushing to the male spirit, because there's no sense of heroism there. It's just completely soulless and without content. Men are biologically built for conquest and, like you said, for hunting and for gathering and for protecting and for fighting. And the modern world is so completely sterilised and without all of this sort of thing that I don't think it's any surprise that men are feeling directionless and without place in modern society.
Are you a man at home? Do you feel some of the ways that Charlie's explaining? Matthew, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think Charlie... I disagree with Charlie because I don't think all men are built the same way. I think that there's lots of... the male farmers who've been here today would say that they're not stuck behind an Excel spreadsheet. And I think I support International Men's Day. I think it's great that you're highlighting it, Michelle, because, as you say, the mental health challenges that men face, and it's not just mental health, there's also physical health challenges that men face that don't talk about it, partly because blokes don't like talking about their health in the same way. So if it gets guys not talking to each other, because actually we found with women's health, for example, women sharing experiences is a hugely beneficial thing. So this isn't about anybody lecturing the fellas. It's about just trying to say to fellas, it's okay to talk about something other than football. I think we need heroism from men and from women in our society. We know all different types. I think it is challenging now for young men. I think we have seen a big change in the role of men. I got a good deal older Charlie, and therefore, seeing that change means that people may feel destabilised, and that's why I think it's fine to say you don't have to be like this. There isn't a sort of blueprint on how to be a man. It's a complicated thing, and it's a thing that's constantly evolving. So let's talk about it. Let's have that conversation, and let's hope that men feel supported to not always be sure and to be themselves. Working it all out.
I particularly feel quite sorry for young, white, working-class men, because if you look across society now, there is such an agenda, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, all the rest of it. And I imagine that if you're a white, working-class man, that you're probably seen as being at the back of the queue. I don't know, say if it's a job opportunity or whatever, because so many places want to tick all the different boxes and so on and so forth. Do you agree with that sentiment or not?
Yeah, I do agree with that sentiment. I think that white working class men, just white men in general, have been thoroughly demonised by all of the institutions that have power in our society, whether it's the universities or the corporations or the HR departments or the government itself. They all seem to take aim at young white men because, well, I think there's a number of reasons for it, but again, at base, I think that there is an attack on the very principle of masculinity, because masculinity is what builds the world, and we're governed by people who seem only interested in destruction.
But well, I think masculinity. I don't think it's only men who build the world. I think women play. Without women, we wouldn't have any. We wouldn't have the next generation. So, I think it is confusing. Look, it's not just about young men. There's a great movement called Men in Sheds. Have you heard of this? Which is what they do is groups get together, and because often older men get, if they've lost a spouse, they get very lonely and isolated. So, some older men, obviously, they were, so there's a great Men in Sheds movement, which is around the country. What they've found is if you sit people down and say, oh, let's have a nice chat about how you feel, people just close up, particularly people from an older generation. So what they do is it's a bit like the Repair Shop, the TV show. They get people to go in a shed because a lot of men love their sheds, and they mend things or they're making things, and apparently they just really get talking because it's natural to have a conversation with your mate at the next workbench in a way you're not going to if some social worker tells you must sit down now and talk about your feelings, and that's really helped with some people's sense of isolation. So it's about finding different solutions to support men as life changes. Nobody's saying that everybody's got to be like a sort of lefty dream of of a new man. It's supporting men in their journey.
Two quick points here, Michelle, if I may. The first is I think that what you said earlier about men needing to talk about their problems, and Michelle, you touched on this as well, the idea that we should be talking about our mental health to one another, again, misunderstands men in general, because, when I was in my mid to late teens, I felt very directionless and purposeless and I was struggling with my mental health, to use the modern sort of language. But as soon as I joined the gym and started training martial arts and that sort of thing, all of that disappeared, because I think men are fundamentally physical creatures. Whereas with women, I think the kind of talking therapy does work. I think my experience with women in my own life, that's absolutely the case. But all of the young men that I know that joined the gym or started training sports or martial arts or anything else, that has been the single greatest remedy to their mental health troubles above everything else. And so, I think that there needs to be a mainstream conversation about that things like International Men's Day just don't address. Well, yeah, there we go.
So there you go. That's interesting perspectives, different opinions there, especially in terms of whether or not we need an International Men's Day. One of my viewers has got in touch and said, Michelle, you are absolutely off the mark with your suicide statistic. He says, I'm out by a factor of 100. Well, I'm not actually. And I know it's such a shocking statistic, so I will say it to you again. So globally, this is not a UK thing. This is globally. One man every minute of every day dies by suicide. Look it up if you don't believe me. It's absolutely shocking. Something is going wrong in society. I've had suicide ideation myself. I don't wish it on anyone. It's horrendous. How do we fix it? How do we fix that challenge? You get in touch and tell me. Let's carry the conversation on about men then.